I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today we're going to review the Mikal Cronin release, MC2. If you guys haven't heard of Mikal Cronin, you're probably in the same boat I was about a week ago. Mikal Cronin, actually, he's a guitarist who has played with Ty Segall, who I've only vaguely listened to. I know a lot of you guys have commented to Tom and I about listening to Ty Segall and really getting into his stuff because he's doing some cool stuff too. But you know, as Mikal Cronin, and we actually did look this up. I know we're from Iowa, often mispronounce things, but it is Mikal Cronin.
Yeah.
We believe one
Pretty
source.
sure.
We have no idea of the credibility of this source, but one source said it, so that's what we're going with. Mikal Cronin's album MC2, very much a instant appeal sort of album. Tom, how would you describe the overall sound of MC2? What your initial reaction was?
Well, it's a good traditional like indie rock singer-songwriter type stuff. And the songwriting style reminded me of a lot of different things. I could hear a lot of influence from some kind of 90s rock bands. Weezer, Pavement, even a little bit of Oasis and the way he constructs vocal melodies.
I definitely get that.
But even some Beck, particularly the track See It My Way with that kind of harmonica thing, sounded like something you might hear on an early Beck
I wonder why
album.
that was both of our track picks.
Who knows? Are we Beck fans?
Right,
exactly.
Other modern acts that this kind of reminds me of, Brendan Benson, both in like how he wrote the songs and his vocal presentation. Now, you talked to your brothers, who are all very musical, about this, and they said the new pornographers.
Yeah, which I thought was fair.
Yeah, it's fair. I had to chew on that one a bit because I was thinking from an instrumental perspective, but actually, the guy, Mikal Cronin's vocals, I'm assuming he's a vocalist, I don't really know. His vocals actually sound a lot like AC Newman. Yeah. So that kind of made sense to me.
I think that's where the comparison comes from.
And to tell you the truth, this, I mean, in every song on this album, there's two main guitars that you're hearing at all times. You're hearing a more chord, riff-based guitar. I'm sorry, just straight chords, or it's just a dirty, distorted guitar chord. And then on top of it, you have these really nice guitar melodies, just riffing away. And the way he hooks these two together and how they work with each other is really what makes a song so catchy. The other thing, this is very chorus-centric music.
Definitely.
I mean, every single one of these tracks just has this chorus that hits you in the face.
It's all about those hooks.
Yeah, and honestly, like most of the hooks, you know, the thing is that you can do the verse-chorus format. We all know how much I like it and what I have to say about it, and I'm going to get to some of that later, but when you write it and you do it well, and you write good hooks when you're making that format, you know, your vessel of how you're delivering your music, if you write good hooks, it will work. Yeah. And I think for the most part, Mikal Cronin does that. One thing that I did notice though throughout is that there was times where he was trying to do vocal harmonies. And I didn't feel like the vocal harmonies were always in tune, which is a little bit embarrassing to tell you the truth, because I feel like when you put out a release, like you should, unless you're under some like crazy record contract where your record company's just like, you must do this regardless of the quality, you got the wrong record label. But if that's the case, that's unfortunate, but you should at least try to polish up your vocals and make them always sound good. It's one of those things that just sticks out like a sore thumb to me. You should just fix. And there's too many times on this album where I found myself going, yeah, I love what they're doing. I love the hooks. This should sound good, but for whatever reason, they just glossed over that in the review process.
And I think sometimes you can get away with that, but not when you're going for something with kind of a bright pop rock appeal. Yeah. And that's definitely what this album is. And he makes that clear from the get-go. And it's pretty consistent throughout. Now, you do get some kind of softer stuff in the back half. For me, I like those songs all right, but I gotta say, by the time I got to that point in the album, I really dig it. This is an album that it's hard not to like because there's so much charm here. Yeah. But by the time I get to the end there, it's wearing a little bit thin, and I wish that some of those softer tracks would have been mixed in earlier in the album, because then it wouldn't have gotten really stale by the time I get there. It's like after I've heard so much of the kind of poppy fun stuff, all of a sudden when I hear some kind of down-tempo stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm just kind of done with this.
Yeah. No, track 1, Wait, 2, Shout It Out, 3, Am I Wrong, 4, See It My Way. Those 4 tracks are all so strikingly similar in their composition. But then you get a little bit of a change in that See It My Way. And, I'm sorry, Peace of Mind, track 5. And you get a little bit of violin in that track. It's a little bit softer. And that's one thing I do want to touch on here, because I think there's 2 main things that make this have a lot of instant appeal and then kind of wear thin after you get, like, I listened to this probably 6 times before turning on this camera tonight, and maybe more than that, to tell you the truth. It's 6 close listens. And one thing that I found is that the more I listen to this, the more I'm able to just walk away from it going, I don't really need to come back to this one.
I agree. Yeah, it was kind of diminishing return on this
and
album.
That's never a good sign. I prefer the exact opposite, where each listen is more rewarding. OK Computer, I've been listening to that album for like a decade now, and every time I listen to it, I find something new I like about it. That's the ultimate grower album for me. This is the exact opposite of that, and that's a big no-no. To me, there's 2 things that he's doing. One, what we already touched on, the structure. Having the verse-chorus structure. You're only presenting one idea. Come on, you can be more genuine than that. You can have some cool ideas to infuse in your music structurally, changing up the time signature, adding intro, outro choruses. It doesn't have to be post-rock by any means. It doesn't have to be some, just gigantic experiment. It doesn't have to be like that, but be creative and let that infuse those ideas into your music, and it will be more refreshing for your listeners and improve the listening experience. It doesn't do that. Second, dynamics. Oh my God, dynamics. In each individual track, it's just boom, one dynamic, the entire song. It kills me when artists do it. Now, thankfully, MC2 is loaded with pretty short track lengths. Yeah. So I think that when you're gonna blast somebody with this format with one dynamic, it's at least in a condensed dose.
And that's closer to the punk format at that point. They knew, punk musicians, especially the early ones, knew that if you're gonna just have a blast of one dynamic, keep it at 2 minutes.
But I mean, usually this is turned up to 11 to the point that, it's inherently low budget production just because it's very indie music, right? So it does sound kind of distorted because of the volume at times. That didn't bother me too much because it did the sound, like you always say. So that wasn't a big deal, but to me, dynamics would have made this a lot more engaging. Just focusing, and maybe just adding new structures, ideas to it, intro, outros, things like that could really help add some dynamics in, because very few tracks really had the dynamics that I was looking for in a setup like this and the sound that he was going for. Now, the closing track, Piano Mantra. I really liked that change. Yeah. I wish that there was more of that throughout the album.
I totally agree.
And to me, if you're going to have a closing track be vastly different than the rest of your album, I feel like he could have incorporated it better, because it kind of was like out of left field. I liked it, but it didn't really fit the album. And to me, just from all the thesis papers I had to write in college, I look at that last song on an album as kind of the inevitable conclusion to everything you heard. It has to sum it up some way. If you're going to leave on a stark note that you want to turn your listeners' attention the other way, do that, but he didn't really do that, I don't think. So that kind of hurt me on this album. Tom, final thoughts? Where are you at?
I'm going to give this a 78. I really enjoyed it just because it's so much fun to listen to, but from a little bit more of an intellectual standpoint, I thought it was a little lacking, and as I said, I was kind of liking it less each time, but that's where I ended up.
Damn it, Tom. I'm going 76. You know what that means?
Another 77!
The dreaded 77. We've had so many 77s this year.
Go to our list of best to worst all-time scores on velocitiesandmusic.com and check out how many 77 scores we've given.
But you know what? That's a good sign. Because it means that there's a lot of consistently solid albums we've reviewed.
It's the center of the bell curve.
It is the center of that bell curve. That's exactly what we're looking for. So if you're looking for something that's fun, that you don't really want to think too hard about and just want to put on and enjoy, and it's just going to be so sugary sweet, Mikal Cronin's MC2 is probably a good album for that. Try to dig into it a little bit more and tell us what you think at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. That's where we do most of our talking with you. And tell your friends about Velocities and Music. We're here for you guys. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.